Hey, Darin Mangum here, the PPM Attorney. In today's video, I wanted to share an analogy that I like to give to people that call in that ask, do I really need a PPM or do I really need a private placement memorandum? I mean, I'm only raising a certain small amount of money from just a handful of investors. Do I really need to invest in all the legal protections that are delivered through a private placement memorandum? And I like to use my grandmother as an analogy. For example, if I were to borrow $1 from my grandmother to start my business, and I said, "Hey, Grandma, I'm going to borrow this dollar, and I'm gonna give you a promissory note, or an IOU, and I'll pay you back with interest on this dollar. Or hey, I just need this dollar. I'm going to give you a share of stock, one share of stock in my company." Now, technically, I've done what? I've sold a security, right? Notes, stock, any kind of interest is a security, right? Now, it may be obviously an unregistered security. It may be obviously covered under different offering exemptions, but I'm really not covered. I'm not covered with my grandmother when it comes to federal and state anti-fraud provisions. Technically, my grandmother could potentially sue me, like if things don't go well for my business. Grandmother theoretically could sue me for that dollar, right? Now, chances are she's not going to sue me for $1, right? Chances are she is not going to file a complaint with the SEC over that dollar. It's just $1. And if she did make a big deal about it, like let's say, hey, she used to be really lovey, brought me, made me breakfast and all this, but now she's angry because of that dollar. Well, guess what? I probably could find $1 and in my wallet and give it to her, make it all, okay, Grandma, you're good, everything's good. Here's your $1 back, right? Even with some interest. Here's $2. We're good. Obviously for my grandmother, I'm not going to be investing money into a private placement memorandum to protect myself for that dollar. Why? Because the exposure is not that great, right? I'm just dealing with my grandmother, and chances are she's going to love me anyway, regardless, right? So I'm not going to go through the expense of doing that PPM. Now, on the other extreme, let's say I borrowed $1 million from my grandmother. Or let's say she put her $1 million into my business. Okay, and now let's say things didn't go so well, like maybe the business didn't go off exactly like I'd hoped, and now that $1 million is gone. Is my grandmother going to still love me? Maybe, but maybe it might put a bigger strain on the relationship, obviously, and so. She might not love me so much, and she might file a complaint with the SEC. She might, because heck, it's $1 million, right? It may be her only million, unless my grandmother's a billionaire, which she's not. She likely is going to maybe come after me for that $1 million, right? And so, or if she doesn't, maybe one of her other grandsons might convince her that, hey, you got to go get your $1 million back. So anyway, my exposure is greater. Even though I'm just dealing with one investor, I'm still got $1 million exposure. Unless I've just got $1 million in my wallet, I can pay her off. Yeah, you better believe I'm going to want to use a PPM, even if it's for my grandmother, because why? The exposure is there, right? And so when it comes to your deal, when you're talking about, I'm just raising a small amount of money or a small number of investors, the exposure is really what the PPM or private placement memorandum is meant to protect against, right? You don't want to be personally on the hook to repay that money, right? And and obviously the greater the amount of money that you're raising, the greater the need for a PPM. Because why? You just don't have the resources to just to pay people back or to whatever. You're at risk, right? And so the PPM, private placement memorandum, is meant to offset that risk, but because you're giving them full and fair disclosure, they're willing to accept the risk in exchange for the opportunity. And the private placement memorandum is designed to disclose all the risks. And so therefore, if things don't go so well or whatever, then you are protected. You're not personally obligated to pay that money back, right? And obviously, if the SEC ever came and looked at you, their job is what? Their job is to protect investors. And so if it's just your grandmother or just one investor, especially if you're dealing with accredited investors, maybe they're not interested in protecting that one or handful of accredited investors. But yet, if you have multiple investors, then obviously the exposure is greater, right? And so anyway, the rule of thumb is, the greater the amount of money you're raising, the greater the number of investors you have, the more you definitely want to put a private placement memorandum in place. Now, again, there's no hard, fast rule. People, they call me and say, I just have, $400,000 raise and I've got 6 investors. It's like, is that worth it? Again, I've designed flat fee PPM solution packages that really fit the needs of any budget. And so we always can find a PPM solution for you. So there's never excuse to go out there half-cocked or trying to save some money by going without a PPM, even if it's just your grandmother. So anyway, be good out there and make sure you get a private placement memorandum in place. And if you need help with that, obviously I'm here, just a phone call away, can help you with that. And anyway, hopefully this analogy was helpful. If you like this content, please like this video, subscribe to my channel, or obviously if we can help you in any way, feel free to give me a call. Thank you.